Joining me now, Andrew McCarthy, former assistant U.S. attorney and National Review contributing editor and Fox News contributor. Andy McCarthy, great pleasure.
Larry.
Your column in the New York Post, Trump raid is not about classified documents, it's about January 6th, is a hypothesis that I happen to agree with. But you're smarter than I am, certainly on this stuff. So tell us some more. I mean, just, stepping back, Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff, said this whole flop was about overdue library books. I mean, no one really believes that the only thing here is they couldn't negotiate with the National Archives, and for this they've created this massive firestorm, unprecedented invasion of Mar-a-Lago. There's much more to it than that. Please tell us.
I think so, Larry, and I don't mean to suggest that they're not interested in, government records, and if there's national security information, I'm sure they're interested in getting that back. But I don't think you can separate what happened at Mar-a-Lago from what we've seen over the last 6 weeks, where in conjunction with these high-profile House January 6th committee hearings, we've seen frenetic activity at the Justice Department in connection with their investigation of January 6th, where they've turned their attention from the rioters to the Trump White House. At the end of June, on the same day, they do search warrants on two of the lawyers, Jeffrey Clark and John Eastman, who are implicated in the January 6th stuff. Last week, they issued two grand jury subpoenas to two of the Trump White House counsels, including the chief counsel, Pat Cipollone, and his deputy, Pat Philbin. And then the day after Mar-a-Lago, they encounter the Congressman Perry from Pennsylvania on the street with his family in Pennsylvania. And lo and behold, they have a search warrant and take his phone away. So all of that stuff is clearly related to their January 6th investigation. And if anyone thinks that this thing at Mar-a-Lago, which happens in the middle of all that, has nothing to do with it, I just think that's a naive way to look at it.
I'm hearing or reading that Merrick Garland has impaneled a grand jury, and that the purpose of that grand jury is January 6th, the Capitol riot, and he wants to link Trump to it in some criminal, seditious way.
Right. Well, look, as I just said, they did issue grand jury subpoenas to these two White House counsels, and they're not the first people to get grand jury subpoenas. So there's clearly a grand jury. I think that there's two buckets of crimes here. One of them is violent crime, and I don't think they have a prayer of making a violent crime case that implicates President Trump. But they're also looking at the whole trajectory of activity that went on from Election Day through January 6th, and this whole Stop the Steal stuff. And they're looking at that under a theory that it could be obstruction, conspiracy to obstruct Congress, conspiracy to defraud the government, and I think that's what they're homing in on, and that's what their investigation is mainly about.
No, I misunderstood. I thought that he was going to impanel another grand jury, but no, I got it. So you're saying this is proof pudding that there is already a grand jury. It hasn't been publicized yet,
yeah.
But you're saying there is definitely a grand, and this is the grand jury that you think they will try to indict Trump for criminal charges or worse.
Yeah. Yeah, my understanding, Larry, is that there's more than one grand jury, which you would expect because I think they indicted like over 800 people in connection with just the Capitol stuff. But they have at least two grand juries that are working this, and they've been at it a long time. They can sit for 18 months. They can get renewed. So this may go on for a while, but they've clearly changed their focus from the riot, where I think they're just about done bringing in everyone they intend to charge with that, to the activities that led to the riot. At least that's the theory of the prosecution.
So, in your judgment, you've had a lot of experience as a federal prosecutor. Are you surprised that no statement out of the FBI, no statement out of the Justice Department, and that nobody knows what's was in this warrant? Nobody knows. Are you surprised?
Yeah, I'm not surprised that there's no statement. I'm not surprised that there's no statement out of them, because their culture is not to talk about investigations. But I do think it's foolish on the part of the Attorney General in this regard. I wouldn't expect them to tell you what's going on in their investigation, but they should have a good reason why when there was amicable negotiations apparently going on between the lawyers for Trump and the lawyers for the government, why they suddenly had to go to DEFCON 5 and do a search warrant. So if Garland's got a reasonable explanation for that, like if he could come out and say, you know, look, we sat down with them, we told them why it was important to have this back. They wouldn't give it to us, so we gave them a grand jury subpoena. They still wouldn't give it to us, so what were we to do? We had to get a warrant. People might not agree with that, but at least they would understand it. At least they would say, okay, well, that's a little bit more reasonable than it looks like. But they're not even saying that. So I think that is a big part of the reason that people are very puzzled, especially when they look at how the Hillary Clinton investigation, you know, the kit gloves that they used with that, the Hunter Biden investigation, you know, it just seems like depending on whether you have a D or an R after your name, the quality of justice you get is very different.
Yeah, well, double standards are running wild here. Andy, I want to just, before we lose you, President Trump was appearing before the New York Attorney General Letitia James today. He took the Fifth Amendment, right, which I think was a very wise thing. Why should he reveal his business or financial practices to Letitia James? But here's the goal. I want to play some statements by Letitia James to let you and others, if you haven't seen this already, what kind of attorney general this really is. Take a listen to this.
Yep.
We need to focus on Donald Trump. We need to follow his money. What is fueling my soul right now is Trump.
This illegitimate president. I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, and then going home.
You just have to love this. She's the Attorney General. She's slamming him, insulting him all the time in her campaign and as New York State Attorney General, which is an important position. And she wants him to testify about his financial and business practices. I mean, I think he's totally right to take the Fifth Amendment. Why should he share anything with her where she is so totally left-wing biased and Trump-hating?
Yeah, it's a real demonstration, Larry, of the difference between a system like in the federal system. I'm not saying the federal system is perfect by any means, but you get an appointed attorney general, and one of the things he has to show the Senate is that he's going to be even-handed in the administration of justice. In New York, attorney general is an elected position. It's a political position, and she said the things that you just played because that was appealing to the voters that she was appealing to in New York. And I think it does a great discredit to the New York justice system.
Yeah, it really does. And I think Trump is exactly right to just stand there and diss her back and take the Fifth Amendment. He didn't flinch at all. Anyway, Andy McCarthy, thanks for the updates. We appreciate it.